I'm not gonna lie, I sat down to work on this video and thought that it would be a good idea to kick the channel off with, and, after reading every word of the Declaration of Independence, I only fully realize now just how hard it goes.
You're goddamn right.
There are very few documents in the history of humanity that even come close to the Declaration of Independence. Honestly, outside of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I don't think that there are any documents which surpass it in beauty, wisdom, and global impact. In today's episode, I'm going to break down the Declaration of Independence in simple terms that anyone can understand and kind of leave us with an idea of what it means for us now, 250 years later. For those of you who don't know, the Declaration of Independence is America's foundational document, followed only by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now, yes, it is super important for the fact that it declared our independence from Great Britain, but looking at the Declaration now, 250 years later, it's almost more important as a document that establishes firmly what America is and what it stands for. In just 18 sentences and a list of grievances against King George, the Declaration of Independence establishes a new order for the ages and a country that will have a motto eventually, which is E pluribus unum, which is Latin for out of many, one. Written by Thomas Jefferson and signed in Congress on July 4th, 1776, the Declaration is made up of 3 sections that establish the basic underlying principles of our nation, the facts which justified a revolt against Great Britain and King George, and a declaration to the world with a pledge to ourselves before God and man that we are a free people. These 3 sections are effectively known as the Preamble, the list of grievances against King George III, and the Resolution for Independence.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
In just the first 5 sentences, the Preamble establishes the foundation of natural rights, the articulation of the social contract upon which governments are formed by men, and the right of revolution. It reads, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. The first thing that you should realize about the Declaration is that it wasn't some private letter between the US Congress and King George III. This was a public declaration for all who would listen, where the United States was standing on the soapbox of the world stage, declaring to everybody what it was about to do and why. The statement, to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, is saying that the US is taking an equal footing with any other country. Its citizens are taking an equal footing with any other citizens. And that is a position which the nation and her people are entitled to by birthright, according to natural laws as divinely ordered by God himself. We'll get more to this in a moment. The next portion's statement that a decent respect to the opinions of mankind require that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation is saying, quite frankly, that out of respect to humanity and the progress of man which has come before us, upon which civilizations are built, we are required to state for the record why we are declaring independence. And it does all of this in one sentence. One sentence. It's wild. The second sentence is easily the most quoted from the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What a beautiful line. But it's so much more than that. It's the recognition that natural rights are inherent to the foundation of a nation. Nothing like this had ever happened before in human history. Prior to the Enlightenment, natural rights were essentially non-existent in any established form of government. While foundationally natural rights can trace their roots back to ancient philosophy, from the time of the Roman Empire through feudalism and the Renaissance, rights, as they were thought of in legal terms of governance, were established, controlled, and granted by men through orders of rank and nobility. And men were bound to their life's station. Their rights, if they had any, were granted and could be taken away by men and were established by the form of government. There was no recognition whatsoever that individuals were inherently free when they were born, or that such freedoms came from God-given rights that could neither be established or taken away by the government. However, during the 16th and 17th centuries, humanity found itself in an age of enlightenment, and in 1689, the first written theory of natural rights was written down by John Locke in his work, Two Treatises of Government. The work lays out the idea that life, liberty, and property are inherent natural rights to every person by right of birth, that governments exist to protect these rights, deriving their natural authority from the consent of the governed, otherwise known as the social contract, and that people have the right to establish a new government if their current government violates this social contract, otherwise known as the right of revolution. The Founding Fathers were obviously influenced by these works, and as men of the Enlightenment themselves, were the first to establish these principles in the foundation of a nation. The third sentence of the Declaration firmly establishes this theory of social contract: that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. In simple terms, what Jefferson and the Founding Fathers are saying here is that government has no authority but for the consent of the people whom they govern, which is a huge departure from prior forms of government. The idea that power is vested in a government only by the granting of power to that government from the people, and that the only end to which government should function is to secure and protect the natural rights of the people. And if a government fails in these ends, it is the responsibility of the people themselves to get rid of that government and establish a new one. This was the first time in human history where a government not only recognized natural rights and the social contract, but it did so as the very foundation upon which a nation would be built. But at what point do violations give rise to revolution? Well, the fourth and fifth sentences deal with this concept. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. What the Declaration is saying here, guys, is that you don't just wake up one day and decide that you want to revolt. Just because something isn't perfect doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. You shouldn't tear down long-established forms of government that generally work simply because there are less than vital grievances that may pass with time. In recognition of this concept, the Declaration literally says, throughout human history without fail, it's been shown that people are way more likely to just endure suffering for way longer than it would seem, simply for the sake of stability and established customs, when the alternative is to get rid of something they are well accustomed to. A long train of abuses and usurpations proving invariably the same object.
Beautiful. No idea what you said.
Meaning that when people have taken enough crap over a long enough period of time, and the same crap sandwich keeps on getting served over and over and over and over again, such that the people are reduced to absolute despotism, meaning that the people have no recourse whatsoever to make any change at all. Only then does it become the responsibility of the people to throw off the old form of government and to put on a new one. Now, this is the end of the preamble, but It's the beginning of the justification that the Founding Fathers lay out for the right of revolution. A list of 27 grievances are then listed against King George III.
I got a lot of problems with you people!
Most notably, and in summary, here's what it says. King George failed to pass laws that were needed and prohibited colonial governors from doing the same. He restricted or prohibited the right of representation at almost every possible instance. He obstructed justice in countless ways, including making judges dependent on his will alone, and bloating government offices to harass people and to diminish the actual resources that were available to solve real problems. He placed standing armies in times of peace among the colonies, and he quartered those soldiers amongst the colonists. He failed to prosecute murderers for the killing of colonists. He cut off trade with the colonies and the rest of the world. He imposed taxes without consent, taxation without representation. You're starting to see it come together. He deprived the right of trial by jury. This one's funny. He turned Canada into an experimental zone designed as a testing and proving ground for what he intended to do in America. I'm not lying. This is literally the Quebec Act of 1774. Look it up. He plundered coasts, burnt down towns, and overall just destroyed lives of the colonists. And he was otherwise totally unfit to be the head of a civilized nation. So I don't know. At this point, it sounds like a revolution is in order. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind. Enemies in war, in peace, friends. I think you get the idea. It's about to go down. The resolution for independence is the formal assertion that the colonies are now free and independent states, separate and apart from the British Empire. Also known as the Lee Resolution, named after Richard Henry Lee of the famed Lee family, it reads as follows. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract allies, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. Now you can see at the end there, they're effectively saying, we have the right to levy war, and also to conclude peace. So, how do you guys want to play this? But the most beautiful part about the Lee Resolution is not just that it declares formally and assertively independence, but also that it ties itself back to the preamble very eloquently and purposefully. Namely, the tie back to the concept of natural rights and the recognition that the righteousness of the cause of independence is not ultimately appealed to by governments of men, but to the supreme judge, to God himself. And also that the authority upon which the Declaration is made comes from the authority of the people. Again, invoking the social contract. Now, the 18th and final sentence of the Declaration of Independence is, in my opinion, the most underappreciated portion of the entire document. And it's easy for this to happen because, in hindsight, America won the War of Independence. But imagining this sentence at its time gives it a whole new gravity. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's a really powerful line that I honestly fear we rarely understand the gravity of. We have to remember that at the time of the Declaration, winning a war of independence was far from certain. In fact, it was unlikely. So unlikely that no colony had ever tried it and succeeded against the mighty British Empire. The Founding Fathers knew that in doing what they were doing, there was no going back. They knew with 100% certainty, without a shadow of a doubt, that if this cause failed, they were all gonna die. But I also love this sentence because, let's remember, the Declaration was a public document for all to see. And this line right here proved the seriousness with which they took the cause and in their belief of its righteousness. So much so, they somberly pledged everything that they had to one another, knowing full well that if it failed, they would all be put to death and their families would be dishonored, disgraced, and left destitute. So my question is this: have you ever felt so strongly about something that you would do the same? Because that is what America was built upon. You see, to be American is not some transient, meaningless condition. It is a privilege with an incredible burden of responsibility. For it to work now and in the future, it kind of needs to work the same as it always has. With God as our witness, and with faithfulness to his providence, we too must mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That is the flame of liberty. That is the seriousness with which we must take our responsibilities as Americans. And we must treat that flame as though we should all die if its flame should ever extinguish. So I hope you understand a little bit more about the Declaration of Independence in simple terms. I hope that you appreciated this video, and I hope that you appreciate whatever opportunities might be before you in whatever stage of life you're currently in. Go and take advantage of them. Do awesome things, because that's what our founding fathers did, and that spread the flame of liberty across the entirety of Western civilization as a result. So if you like this video, consider subscribing. It really does help the channel. It's brand new, and I'm going to be releasing videos every week just like this. And if you have any ideas for things that you'd like me to break down, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'll be going through all those and taking note. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. I appreciate you very much, and I will see you on the next one. Have a wonderful day. So how about them Cowboys? Yeah, they're not very good. I know. It's a shame.